What's up, ladies and gents? CenterStrain01 here, and I wanted to just kind of discuss, not too long, a little bit of what I thought of Star Wars Rogue One, or should I say Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I went and saw the early screenings last night on Thursday, IMAX 3D. We were in the second row, and it was just, whew, I'm telling you. So, first of all, I am a huge Star Wars fan, okay? Ever since I was a little kid and watched, A New Hope, it brings you in. It really sucks you into that like kind of that universe, that galaxy of far, far away. So just to get things going, there are going to be spoilers in this. Of course it is. I will make sure to put spoilers down in the things below, as I just want to kind of talk about the movie, and then you guys that have one out and seen it over the weekend, or when you do eventually go and see it, you can come back to this video and make sure to put in the comments below what you thought of the movie and stuff like that. So from this point on, there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go out and see it. You're doing yourself an injustice by not doing so and watching this video. All right. So with that being said, here we go. All right. So first of all, it opens up with the familiar a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And at that moment, see, I haven't been reading too much into the theories of what's going to happen, or all I've seen were the trailers. I didn't go into it like looking up a lot of information on it, as I don't want to be spoiled from the movie before it starts. So I was really, really expecting there to be a crawl, as soon as it did a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Then all of a sudden that empowering Star Wars music to come up and be like, dun, 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 and it... It didn't happen. And I was like, what? So that took me back for like a good 2 minutes. I was surprised that there wasn't a crawl. But then I realized, well, I guess it makes sense because this is an anthology movie. It's not part of the saga. Maybe they only want that crawl to be in the saga. So once I got over that and stopped whining about that, we can move on. So it just pretty much starts out like any other Star Wars movies would after the crawl, where you're in space, you're looking at a planet and all that kind of stuff, and then you're looking down, and then the movie is starting and it's going on. So pretty much it leads up to where the characters are. You have this guy named... I'm not even good with the names of the characters, and you're going to see this probably in a lot of reviews because of the way that this story is, the way it sets itself up. There's no sequel to Rogue One. I mean, that's well, there is a sequel to Rogue One. It's called Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. So but these cast of characters, they're not going to be in another Star Wars film. So I think his name is Jyn Erso, or Galen Erso, right? Yeah, Jyn Erso is the daughter, and Galen Erso is, because like I said, I never really looked into it too much except for the trailers. So I don't have, memorization of the names and stuff like that. But it opens up with Galen Erso and his family there. He's kind of like, I guess, a imperial scientist, or he's not necessarily in charge of creating the Death Star, but I think that he is in charge of creating the doomsday weapon of the Death Star. Now, the Death Star is known for its doomsday weapon, but he didn't create the sphere. He didn't create all that stuff. He created the weapon that they use that can destroy planets and cities and things like that. So he, I guess, didn't want to work on it anymore. He didn't want to be a part of it, so he left the Empire with his family, his wife, and his daughter, Jyn Erso, and they were kind of secluded. So it pretty much starts with the Imperial Army coming down on him, and the main lead guy, I can't remember his name, but he did a great job, and he felt like that classic kind of Star Wars political villain who had no decency in his heart whatsoever. He'd kill anybody, and stuff like that. So it opens up with him and a couple of I guess they're called black troopers or something like that. These guys can actually shoot straight, as opposed to the regular stormtroopers who knock themselves in the head from episode 4, which is one of my favorite bloopers. But anyways, it starts with him. He's trying to get him back, and he tells, or before I don't know if he's a general or not, but before this guy and the black troopers come up to him, he tells his family that you need to go and run, hide, go. And they do that, so he's there alone with him. But for some reason, the mom leaves the girl behind and says, keep going. And she goes back. And I don't know, she was an idiot character. I didn't really like her character because I felt like she died needlessly. Why wouldn't you stay with your daughter? That should be the most important thing. But she didn't. She left the daughter. The daughter went to go hide in a certain spot. And her curiosity got the better of her, so she went up to where they couldn't see her. And then she saw the whole thing happen where the mom was going to shoot. And the Imperial guys, they shot her, and boom, she's dead. And then that's pretty much the beginning of the story. And it's just kind of weird how they set that up, because you really, from that moment on, you didn't really like the mom. You were like, why would she leave her daughter? Why would she get herself killed? The general guy said that he was going to take the family with him. I actually believed that, because I think he felt that the only friend that general kind of guy had was Galen Erso. He thought of him as like as a friend, as someone with him, I guess. But he needed to use him again to keep continuing to make this doomsday weapon. So she sees the whole thing. She runs off. They don't find her. She hides in this really well thing. But there is a character that Galen Erso talked to before the Imperials arrived and said, hey, they're coming. I need you to take my family. And that was the setup for it. So when this character who is from the Clone Wars, and I can't remember his name either. I can't remember any of these names. He comes in, he's played by Forrest Whitaker. He comes in and he grabs the girl, and pretty much that's the beginning, or that's the end of that little beginning section. And then all of a sudden, Rogue One appears on the screen, and you're thinking, now it's time for the crawl. No. So that confused me too, because I was like, yes, the crawl is coming. But I guess not. So they're really going in a different direction. I'm not going to go through the whole movie. I just wanted to explain the opening, and now I'm going to go over kind of just like a few of my favorite parts of the movie. I don't want to make this too long for you guys. But first of all, I loved it. Is it my favorite Star Wars film? No. But it is very, very close. It is a very, very good swashbuckling war action space opera kind of a movie. It's just on the outside of what a normal Star Wars movie would be, right? Because this is not a happy ending. And you could say this is in a lot of ways similar to, Empire Strikes Back, right? It doesn't. It has a good ending, a happy ending. Well, not really a happy ending, but it has a kind of a happy ending because it leads into A New Hope, where they have the Death Star plans and stuff. So you consider that a happy ending. But none of the characters make it out alive. And I think this is something a lot of people knew. Rogue One was always meant to be a suicide mission as to get the Death Star plans. And nothing is talked about this in detail in A New Hope. So you know that these people that got the plans, no one either cares about them or they died or whatever. They were never mentioned again. So I knew going into this movie that probably all of them were going to die. And yes, they all die. But they all die in really cool, satisfying ways. And I don't want to skip too far ahead to the very, very ending, but there are some moments where you get some callbacks to episode 4, right? So one thing that blew my mind was I knew that since this is set like literally moments before episode 4, that they would have to find a way to put Darth Vader in. We all saw the little piece of him in the trailer. So I knew he was going to be in there. But what I wasn't for sure if in any way Peter Cushing was going to be in, Grand Moff Tarkin. So when it came up to him and you see his back of a head, just like they kind of did in episode 3, where you saw when Darth Vader was just finally actually Darth Vader and they're on the Imperial ship, and then you see Grand Moff Tarkin next to him and he just kind of nods and then turns away and moves around. You don't really see him. I thought that was pretty much going to be the same thing. They're not going to actually show him. But then they start moving up closer and closer, and you could see his reflection in the mirror, and it looks just like Peter Cushing, and you're like, wow, they did a pretty good job there. And I thought, okay, they're not going to show actually him. And then all of a sudden it just turns around, and then you see full-on Peter Cushing. I was blown away. I mean, I and everyone else in the movie theater, we just started screaming and yelling because it was amazing. I know for a moment I was like, what? I had that slight moment. I was like, oh my God, Peter Peter, I didn't think it was CGI at the very, very beginning for like a split second where you had that moment of what just happened. And then you started, once you realized that your brain was still working, you were like, okay, he's dead. Obviously this is a CGI, but they did a good job. Was it perfect? Of course not. Come on, it'll never be perfect. But it is the best representation of a human character that I have seen so far. I mean, this looked exactly like Peter Cushing. His voice was kind of on and off a little bit. I think they definitely got the feel of his character, right? So, but the voice wasn't spot on, but you could, if you were a Star Wars casual fan, you would not, honestly, I don't think you'd be able to tell that this was a CGI character. Obviously, some guy did the motions for this. There was an actual person there, and then they put the face of Peter Cushing on. Now, Peter Cushing's face is very detailed. It's very kind of curved in. He's got a very unique look to his face. So because of that, I would say it was a lot easier to make it look more realistic, because Peter Cushing always had that kind of unrealistic, just the way that, his face curved in and stuff. But they did an amazing job with it. I liked it. I know some people are going to think that it was hokey and there was no reason for it, but I mean, come on. If this is taking place right before Episode 4, A New Hope, you got to have that main villain in there. You got to have that in there. And what's hilarious is he is actually shown more in this movie than he is shown in A New Hope. So the digital Peter Cushing is in this movie more than the real Peter Cushing from 1977. So that's hilarious too. But they did a great job with that. I was so happy. We got some other cameos, which was... if you would have asked me if I would have thought that this character would be in this movie, I would have been like, there's no chance. But if you remember in Episode 4, A New Hope, when they're in the cantina, right, and Luke is at the bar, he's talking to the bartender, Chewie and Obi-Wan are talking to themselves, and there's these two characters next to him. He accidentally bumps into him, says he's sorry, and he goes, "You'll be sorry," or "I'm wanted in 12 systems. You'll be dead," all that famous stuff, the guy, and then he gets his arm cut off by Obi-Wan. A really cool scene in Episode 4. He bumps into one of the characters. I can't remember if it was Jen or the guy, but he bumps into him, and you see him there with his with the alien creature, and everyone started laughing because we all remember that guy. But there was just What made me think too much about it was a little bit later. The city gets blown up that they're in by the Death Star, because obviously in Episode 4, A New Hope was the first time they used the weapon on a planet scale, but they've used it, I guess, before then to destroy cities, smaller things like that. So this city was destroyed no more than an hour later. So that means he would have had to have left this planet or left the city area within an hour. And I think that's harder to believe, because then he has to go all the way over to Mos Eisley on Tatooine to see him, like literally within the next 2 days or so. I don't know exactly, but I mean, the movie just leads up right until the scene from A New Hope. So that's something a little disbelief for me, but it was still really cool to see some characters from A New Hope in there. As far as all the characters go, I guess the one that stand out to me was, and I might be saying his name wrong, KTSO or something like that. He was the robot character. Alan Tudyk did an amazing job. Alan Tudyk is from Firefly. He was the pirate in Dodgeball. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's a really, really cool, funny actor. And he did a great job with this robot. He was not annoying like, say, Jar Jar Binks, and he wasn't kid funny as, say, C-3PO. He was kind of like that in between, where he had a thing where so he's an Imperial droid who has been reprogrammed for the Republic, or for the Rebels. So his character had no filter. He would always say what was on his mind. He was programmed to say what was on his mind. So he was very sarcastic in the most funniest of ways, and he really stole the show in this whole movie, because every time he was on screen and every time you saw him, he was just dead on, perfect, funny, and he brought that comedic but yet still serious tone of the movie, and it was a great job. He did a great job. I think that was probably the standout character. Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones, did a great job. But none of these characters to me, except for KTSO, are memorable enough for you to, and I say this in a good way. I'm sure the filmmakers maybe didn't have this in mind, but I like to think that they did, that they made these characters, you don't get to learn a lot about their backstory except Jin. And I'm okay with that because I don't want to know everything about these characters and then just watch them die in one movie and never be heard of again. So if you think about it in that way, they did a perfect introduction to these characters and they did it perfectly because you like the characters. There's nothing wrong with the characters. You're following their story. You're following what's going on with them. You know it's a suicide mission. You know they're probably going to die, but it doesn't go too much into their backstory, and that's okay because we know what's going to happen to them. I don't need this huge buildup for them when they die. I still felt the impact of their deaths, even without knowing deeply about them. He's not really a Jedi. You don't know if he has Force powers or not, but he believes he does. His character was so good. I think, what is it? Donnie Wu, or I can't remember the guy's name. I'm not good with names. They didn't make the characters' names very memorable, and I think they did that on purpose because everybody remembers Chewie, everybody remembers Han Solo, Luke Skywalker. They all have Ren, Finn. I mean, you remember that in the actual saga movies, they have names that you can remember. They're characters that you want to see continue to go. These characters, it was meant to be one movie. It was meant to. This is just the story of them doing this, and that's it. I'm perfectly fine with that. It was great. And I think that says so much that they believed in this movie so much that they didn't need to market them as the heroes that we have with Luke, Han, and Leia and all that. Obviously you're not going to market dead characters. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's not kid friendly. So I'm really, really pleased with the way that they went about that. So to move on, we also get to see Darth Vader. He's in 2 scenes, right? The first scene is more exposition, kind of building his established badassery in a mental way as opposed to a physical way. So you see him coming out for the first time. He's in his little tube chamber, kind of like from Empire that Strikes Back, where if you remember in Empire Strikes Back and Luke gets hurt and then Han finds him and then they finally get back to the rebel base, he's in this little water tube hanging and stuff like that. It's kind of, you see him like that. You see Darth Vader like that, right? He's got no arms, no legs, and all that kind of stuff. And you see him like that, but then he gets built. The general is on his way to see him, to talk to him about the Death Star and stuff. And you get his menacing presence. And first of all, James Earl Jones is back and beautiful. It sounded great. It sounded like the Darth Vader from A New Hope. Perfect. Amazing job. The only thing that I felt that the guy they got to play Darth Vader, or the actual guy in the costume, was not bigger as in her, but was kind of chunkier. I felt like he wasn't as athletically Prowse as David Prowse. That was a horrible pun there, but yeah. So that I was a little iffy about that. But that first scene he was in was just really setting up exposition. He had some cheesy lines about, because he force chokes the general guy, and he says, "Don't choke on your aspirations," or something like that. Which was kind of a pun, and I don't see Darth Vader doing puns, but it was still fun nonetheless. And then the next time you see him is at the very end, when it's leading up into A New Hope, and he's on one of the rebel ships, and it's one of the most amazing moments, because you never got to see Darth Vader actually be a badass, right? You've heard about it in books and comics, and you've maybe seen it in games, but you've never seen it in the movies, because in episode 4, 2 old guys are sitting there, fencing. And then in episode 5, between Darth Vader and Luke, it's not like a straight force, pushing things. I mean, it's not out there as we've seen in the prequels, right? So this was the first time that I feel that we've got to see Darth Vader just be unleashed. I mean, completely unleashed, taking out 20 some rebel guys and doing it in this tiny hallway, force choking, cutting people in half. I mean, just I mean, badass moment. And it makes you want a standalone Darth Vader right there. All I could think was my head was, why wasn't he in this movie more? All right, because especially since it leads into Episode 4, and we need a Darth Vader movie. We need a Darth Vader movie, a straight up evil Darth Vader movie that takes place sometime between Episodes 3 and 4 of him maybe hunting the Last Jedi. I think that would be really cool. But great job. He was in very minimalistic, like maybe a total of 6 minutes, 4 minutes of exposition in the talking stuff, and then that last 2 minutes or so of just him being a badass and kicking ass. We went to a lot of different planets in this one, so it was kind of nice to go around and see a little bit more in the galaxy than, say, some of the other movies. But all in all, it was a great movie. Mikhail, whatever his name is, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but I know his name. Mikkelsen I don't know why I can't remember his name. But anyways, the guy that plays Jin's father, Galen, does a great job. I love him as an actor. He was Hannibal in the Hannibal series. He was the villain. What was it, Lestat? Or not Lestat. He was the villain in Casino Royale. He's in the new Death Stranding. He's the villain for Hideo Kojima's new game. Amazing job. And it was so good to see him in kind of a good guy role. But one of the things that his character provides is one of the biggest plot holes in all of Star Wars. So in Episode 4, we were all wondering at the end is, why would the Death Star have this one section that you could put a torpedo in and then blow the whole thing up? Everyone was like, that's the biggest plot hole in the world. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. And we got closure in this movie. This guy, who really is working for the rebels in his own sort of way, said, "Listen, they're gonna build this Death Star. They're gonna build this weapon. Either they're gonna do it without me and I can do nothing about it, or they're gonna do it with me and I can do something about it." So what he does is he goes along with their plans and he builds the weapon. He builds it, but he builds it in such a way that if a torpedo blast or anything like that were to hit a certain area, or the weapon itself, that everything would explode and it would start a chain reaction and destroy the entire station, the entire Death Star. So the way that they explained that was perfect. So it actually means that this guy put it in there for a purpose, that there was a reason that this could destroy the Death Star and not just the Empire are idiots. And that explained, 20, 30 some years of a plot hole that everyone was just like, that just doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? Now you know. And they explained it in such a good way that you actually felt something for it, that you finally got closure on something that that's been on a true hardcore Star Wars fan's mind for so many years. So they got closure on that, which was really cool. As far as the rest of the movie, I was very, very engaged with the movie, but I think the third act, when the huge battle takes place, when they're trying to actually steal the Death Star plans, that was when it really, really, really picked up. The space battles, the rebels fighting, all of that was done very, very well. And I just feel like the more Star Wars that comes out, the more we're going to see these type of action battles. We saw them in Episode 4, 5, and 6, but because of the technology, you really couldn't get your heart into it. You had to imagine more, where now it's like, bam, they can show everything. And the fact is that you got to see some of the Rebel pilots from Episode 4 actually in the movie. So they took pretty much their they took their character from Episode 4 when they're doing the trench run, the gold leader, red leader, all that kind of stuff. They took their character and inserted them into this movie, saying the same lines, but it was really cool because it was like, gold leader standing by, like how they did in the other movie. Another cool fact was, if you remember in Episode 4, Red 5 was Luke's character, right? Red 5 standing by. In this movie, there is another Red 5, but that Red 5 dies, so which kind of makes, which a little kind of an Easter egg, little nod, which makes sense as to why Luke became Red 5. So there's a little something that I noticed. As far as some other things, it was just such a great movie. The characters were great. You could say that the two leads were Diego something, I think is his actual real name, but he was kind of like the Han Solo character. In the beginning, you didn't like him, but you warmed up to him once you saw the struggle that he has been living with, fighting for the rebellion since he was like, I guess, 6 years old. Just such a great story. Now, I don't want to go any more details than that. It's such an amazing movie. I want to hear from you guys. What are your favorite moments in Rogue One? What did you think of it? How do you rate it as far as among all the other Star Wars movies? This makes me excited for the Han Solo movie. It makes me excited for Episode 8. It makes me excited because they mentioned Obi-Wan Kenobi in this. You got to see a digital version of Princess Leia as well. That wasn't as good as the Grand Moff Tarkin digital version, but it was still pretty cool to see at the very end. They hand the Death Star plans to her, and then boom, it's Episode 4. So, I mean, it just leads right into it. You left with a good feeling like you actually want to go see Episode 4 now. You can pretty much take out the end credits, mix them together, and boom, it goes right into it. I mean, it's so amazingly well done. But yeah, let me know what you thought of it. I'm very excited. Hopefully they're going to make some Obi-Wan Kenobi movies. I am really excited about that because I would love to see Ewan McGregor back for that. He was my favorite character from the prequel trilogy. But again, let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you have not seen the movie yet and you just watched this, shame on you. You need to go see it because it is truly amazing. Thank you guys for watching. And of course, I will see you next time. Peace out, bitches.